precious Garland to the Supreme Path. So the topic that we will be dealing with today is called something called Dewa Chimbo Lungin Druba, which means spontaneous formation of the Great Bliss. So here the Great Bliss is referred to the great bliss that the great amount of bliss that one attains when achieving enlightenment. And so what this is a reference to the fact that Buddhahood is spontaneous, or Buddhahood is automatic. So, or Buddhahood is natural. So, and one might say that since we are going through in our day-to-day life, the life in general is not easy, when we have to go through a lot of difficulties and so on and so forth. So how can it be such that the Buddhahood is natural? Buddhahood, how can something as great and as advanced as Buddhahood, something as great as the great bliss, which you attain after gaining Buddhahood, can be spontaneous? How can it be automatic? How can it be natural? Most of the time in our day-to-day life, it seems like our life, the life that we are going through, seems like we are living through, we are going through an upstream river. So everything is so difficult, there is so many complications in life. So how come something as perfect, something as pleasant, something as peaceful as Buddhahood can be, of course, let alone something as peaceful, great, exceptional, and perfect as Buddhahood, let alone for them to be spontaneous? How can they, even for them to be achievable? It's a big question. For someone like us, how can we achieve Buddhahood? Even that is a big question. And to say that they are spontaneous, isn't it a bit far-fetched? Like, isn't it taking a bit too far? How can Buddhahood be natural? So this question arises within us. And to dispel such doubts, to remove doubts like this, to remove doubts of this kind, 10 explanations were made by Master Gampopa. Because of this and this and that, the great bliss is spontaneous, can be spontaneously formed, can be formed spontaneously. The great bliss can be formed spontaneously because of this and this and this and that. So there are 10 reasons specified here. And so one thing we have to understand is that the meaning of spontaneity or nature here is that if you follow this and this and that, then there is no other way but for the Buddhahood or the great bliss to come into formation. So this goes all the way back to the basic teachings of the Buddha Dharma, which is law of causality, cause and effect. So if there is a cause, then there will be an effect. So if you walk this and this and that way, then Buddhahood or the great bliss is natural, will come naturally, will come spontaneously. So even though it does contradict a little bit with the word, the term spontaneity, spontaneity means something that comes naturally without effort in general. So we have to understand spontaneity a little bit differently here. So what it means here is that if you, because of this and that, so there are two sort of truths here. One is the truth of the truth of the reality, the ground reality. Because of the truth of the ground reality, because of the ground reality, Buddha nature, the Buddhahood or the great bliss is spontaneous. And also, I think it's better to think it this way. Because of the ground reality, Buddhahood or the great bliss is spontaneous. But of course, we have to work hard. We have to put in efforts to achieve great bliss. So from an activity, from a process, from a procedural point of view, from an activity point of view, it is not spontaneous because you have to work hard for it. But from the ground reality itself, the Buddhahood or the great bliss is spontaneous. What it all means here is the Buddhahood and the great bliss is all a possibility because of the ground reality there is. So today we will talk about the 10 reasons why the great bliss can be spontaneously formed. Okay, sorry about that. So we will begin the 10 reasons or the 10 dharmas. So it's called 10 dharmas, and I said before, dharma can have many different connotations, and here dharma is referred to reasoning or points, 10 points or 10 reasons. The word used here in Tibetan is chö, which means dharma. But dharma can mean reasoning, dharma can mean points, and so on and so forth. So the 10 points that is used to imply, to prove that the great bliss is the formation of great bliss, the achievement of great bliss is spontaneous. So we will, the first of which is that the natural state of the mind of every sentient being is rooted in Dharmakaya. So what it means is, okay, let me read the phrase. Let me read the quote first. Since all the every sentient being's nature of mind remains or abides in Dharmakaya, thus the great bliss is spontaneously formed. So what we have to understand is Dharmakaya here. Dharmakaya, of course, is referred to the truth body of the Buddhas. But the truth body of Buddha is nothing other than emptiness itself that is realized by the Buddha at the emptiness realized in the form of realization by an enlightened being. So that is Dharmakaya. So Dharmakaya here is nothing other than emptiness itself. So when we use the word Dharmakaya here, we are referring to not the actual body of the Buddha as we perceive or as we see when we think of the Buddha, but the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality of the Buddha's body, which is none other than emptiness. Another thing is, so we will be talking about the bodies of the Buddha frequently here. So we will be talking about the enjoyment body, the emanation body, the truth body, and so on and so forth, the Dharmakaya, Nirmanakaya, Sambhogyakaya, and so on and so forth. So what we have to understand is that in general, when we talk about body, we always think about the physical body that we see, that we identify a person with. Fat body, thin body, big body, small body, like that, tall body, short body. What we have to understand here in the sense of body, so body is a corpus, it's the whole. When we talk about body in general, even in worldly terms, the nose is not a body, the eyes are not a body, the hair is not body, but when you combine everything together, the nose, hair, the whole thing is put together. It's called a body. So similarly, Buddha's body does not mean Buddha's lips or the Buddha's height or Buddha's skin or that specifically, but the corpus of the Buddha's quality in general. So that quality, the corpus of Buddha's qualities can be divided, segmented into four formations, four kinds: the enjoyment body, the truth body, and the enjoyment body, the truth body, the emanation body, and okay. So so there are four bodies of the Buddhas. It can be divided into four segments. So the point is, the Dharmakaya, or the truth body, as we mentioned here, refers to the emptiness. So what it actually says here is that since the mind of all sentient beings, every sentient being, is rooted in Dharmakaya, it means the mind of all sentient beings are rooted in emptiness. And the reason being that the mind of all sentient beings, even though they may be deluded, they may be confused, there may be ignorances and so on and so forth, there may be lots of delusions there, but they are only temporary. The nature of the mind of every sentient being is free from the so it's free from two things. The first thing is that it's free from the ultimate absolutism, or the ultimate reality of existing inherently, since it does not, since it's free from, since it's devoid from existing inherently, it has the potential to change, to transform. And so therefore, the mind of every sentient being, since the mind of every sentient being is not rooted in absolutism, but it is rooted in emptiness, it's rooted in emptiness, it's rooted in the vacuum of absolute existence or inherent existence. So therefore, it does have the chance to transform. If it is rooted in absolutism, then it cannot change, it cannot transform. Since the nature of the mind is rooted in the absence of absolutism, therefore it can change and it can transform. So because of that, since the nature of the mind is not rooted in absolutism, but rather in absence of it, therefore the mind can be transformed. And since the mind can be transformed, it can be from the most imperfect to the perfect state of great bliss, of Buddhahood. And this thing is also known in other terms as the Buddha nature. This is what Buddha nature means. We have the natural tendency to achieve Buddhahood, to become Buddhahood, to attain Buddhahood, to transform into Buddhas by the power of being in absence of absolutism. Okay. So the first thing was that the natural state of the mind of every sentient being is rooted in Dharmakaya, or in other words, in emptiness. So therefore, they are bereft or devoid of inherent existence, or absolutism of inherent existence. So therefore, the mind becomes the mind is not rigid; it is soluble. and so therefore it can be transformed, it can be changed, it becomes malleable, it becomes soluble, and it can be shaped into any form that you want to. So there is the possibility, there is the potential to shape it into the perfect mind, which is the mind of the Buddha, the enlightened mind, the omniscient mind of the Buddha. So that being said, now the second part is the second point is that the Dharmakaya itself, is devoid. It's fundamentally devoid of any signs of elaborations. So let me read the text first. Dharmakaya is fundamentally devoid of any signs of elaborations. Thus, the great bliss is spontaneously formed. So we talk about the mind of every sentient beings rooted in the Dharmakaya. And so therefore, great bliss, or for that matter, the Buddhahood, is a possibility. Now, the Dharmakaya itself, if the Dharmakaya itself is the ultimate thing, and Dharmakaya itself is rooted in absolutism, then again we are back to square zero. We are back to square one. So what happens is that the Dharmakaya itself is devoid of any inherent existence or any elaborations. So elaboration means something that has been an elaboration is something that we do not require as a necessity, but something that we put on as an embellishment, as an addition. So that is what an elaboration means. So the reality of all phenomena is that it is existing by depending upon each other, through dependence, through interdependence. The reality of all phenomena is that they are existing interdependently. But we, through our mind, through our perception, we perceive them to have an inherent nature, an inherent connection, an inherent relation, an inherent dependency. And therefore, we elaborate upon the actual nature of reality. So that elaboration is there from our perspective. From the mental perspective, we elaborate upon things. So it is there. But in reality, the elaboration itself, the elaborations that we add upon the things that we perceive, are not there. So therefore, fundamentally, Dharmakaya, as well as every sentient beings and every phenomena in the in the world, is devoid of any elaborations. So mentally, we elaborate upon such and such things, but in reality, such elaborations are non-existing, are not there in reality. So therefore, Dharmakaya is fundamentally devoid of any signs of elaborations. The elaboration is here. The word elaboration is a reference to our perception of things existing absolutely. That is the meaning of elaboration here. So, since the Dharmakaya is fundamentally devoid of any signs of elaboration that we perceive them to be, therefore, the Dharmakaya, the Dharmakaya, which is the emptiness, the nature of all phenomena, the nature of all phenomena itself is free from absolutism, and so therefore the great bliss is spontaneously formed. Okay. So we deal with the mind, which the mind of every sentient beings, the mind of every sentient being. Sentient beings, when we say sentient beings in Buddhism, when we say sentient beings are beings that has yet to become Buddha. Buddhas are not considered as sentient beings according to Buddhism. So sentient beings are unenlightened beings. And Buddhas are enlightened beings. Now, the mind of every sentient being has the potential to go to Buddhahood. And that is proved because the mind of every sentient being is rooted in the absence of absolutism, which is Dharmakaya. And the Dharmakaya also is devoid of any signs of elaboration. So therefore, Dharmakaya also becomes achievable. Now, the thing is, what actually realizes Dharmakaya? What actually realizes emptiness? So when we talk about mind, there are many different forms of mind within ourselves. We have so many different kind of mindsets. We have anger, which is part of our mind. We have anger, lust, hatred, jealousy, compassion. So good things and bad things. So we have different kinds of our mental factors within our mind. So not every aspect of the mind realizes emptiness. So the mind that realizes emptiness, the mind that actually achieves realization of emptiness or Dharmakaya, is what we usually refer to as realizations. So the mind that actually realizes emptiness is regarded as unimaginably impartial realization. So let me read the text first. The unimaginably impartial realizations are devoid of any biased or prejudiced elaborations. Thus, the great bliss is spontaneously formed. So what it means here is that the mind, the mental factor that perceives emptiness directly is called unimaginably impartial realization. So why is it called unimaginable? Why is it called impartial? So impartial here is a reference to the fact that there are two sort of extremes. The extreme of nihilism, that there's nothing exist, and then the absolutism, the extreme of absolutism, which is that everything exists inherently. So the fact that everything exists inherently and that nothing exists at all, one is absolutism and one is nihilism, and both of these extremes are something to avoid. And the the mental factor which perceives emptiness directly is impartial to both sides, the side of nihilism and the side of absolutism, and therefore it is impartial. And it is also unimaginable. It is unimaginable in the sense that the mind that perceives emptiness can experience or feel it itself. Only the person who actually perceives emptiness directly can experience what it feels like to realize emptiness. That experience cannot be explained, cannot be imagined by someone who has not done so. So therefore it becomes unimaginable. So that realization, that mindset is known as unimaginably impartial realization. And that realization itself, so one might think, oh, that realization is the ultimate go for thing. So that realization must be rooted in absolutism. Absolutely not. So if you think that the realization of emptiness is the key thing, is the most important thing, so therefore it must be existing inherently. It must be realistically out there. It must be there. You know, remember in last week's teaching, being there and not there. We're not talking about existing or not existing. We're talking about being there and not there. So if you think the mindset, the mental factor that realizes emptiness, that directly perceives emptiness, is the ultimate thing, so therefore that must exist inherently, then again you are wrong. You are again rooting for absolutism. And if you root for absolutism, absolutism is absolute. So therefore it cannot be changed. It cannot be transformed. So therefore the realization that perceives emptiness directly is not rooted in absolutism. So therefore the great bliss is spontaneously formed. So what it means is, so therefore the great bliss of Buddhahood becomes a possibility for us, because the realization that perceives emptiness directly is not rooted in absolutism. Again, when we engage in meditation of emptiness, when we engage in actualizing emptiness, when we engage in the meditation of actualizing emptiness, we experience a form of great bliss. So as I said before, here the great bliss is a reference to the great bliss that we derive from when we achieve Buddhahood. But there are many different forms of great bliss. Great bliss in general is one does not need to become a Buddha to experience great bliss. Great bliss can be experienced even before becoming enlightened. But the great bliss, which is the topic of today's talk, is the great bliss that we receive at the time of Buddhahood. Anyway, so there are many different forms of great bliss, or different kind of maybe lesser forms of blisses that we derive when we engage our mind, when we engage our meditation in actualizing emptiness. So such spiritual experiences are important, and such spiritual experiences are of course sacred, very highly regarded. But even such spiritual experiences of engagement into emptiness, or what we call disengagement, disengagement into absolutism. So disengagement into absolutism and engagement into emptiness, they're both the two sides of the same coin. So in the spiritual context, in the text, we usually refer to them as disengagement from absolutism. So if you think that such disengagement from absolutism, or engagement into emptiness, engagement into meditative engagement into realizing emptiness itself is rooted in absolutism, that it is the real thing, this is the thing, then again you are wrong. Since it is not rooted in absolutism, thus the great bliss of Buddhahood is spontaneously formed. Let me read the text. The experiences, spiritual experiences of mental disengagements are devoid of objectification or efforts of objectifying. Thus, the great bliss is spontaneously formed. So here the term objectification is used. So objectifying is pinpointing something. So when we talk about a body, when we talk about a car, if you look for the car, When we do not observe and say, this is the car, of course we can find a car. There's a car parked in the parking lot. But if we try to objectify what is the car, if you look for one object that makes a car, we cannot find it. The tires are not car, the steering wheel is not a car, and so on and so forth. So therefore, objectification of any phenomena is futile. So therefore, the spiritual experiences of mental disengagements. Mental disengagement means meditating into emptiness. Because when you meditate into emptiness, you are when you are engaging into emptiness, you are disengaging from absolutism. So disengagement here refers to meditation into emptiness. So the spiritual experiences of mental disengagements are devoid of objectification. In general, in our day-to-day life, we objectify things. We tend to look for something that makes it valuable. We always look for the value of an object. Oh, this is a car. So why is this car so important? Why is this car so valuable, so expensive? What is the one thing that makes this car so expensive? You know, what is the one thing that makes this house so expensive? What is it? So we always look for the point, the object that the value object of a phenomena. But the spiritual experiences, that is the meditative engagement, the spiritual experiences of meditative engagement into emptiness, is devoid of such objectification. So, okay, I think it's quite, today's topic is a little bit complicated, challenging. Okay, let's leave it here. Okay. If you want me to continue, I will continue. Otherwise, we can have
yes,
Q&A.
you can continue.
Okay?
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So this is the lesson number 4. Yeah. Okay. So the next is once you have the once you have the spiritual experiences. So this is okay. We will call this the on session and off session. Okay. So the previous the previous point, the previous lesson, point number 4, is to deal with on session, meaning meditative engagement. On session is a reference to the fact that when one is engaged in meditative activities, meditative actualization of emptiness, that is on session, and when that meditation is over, that is off session. So because of the on session meditative experiences of mental disengagement, which itself is devoid or free from objectification, now during the off session, after the post-meditative session means after one comes out of the meditative equipoise, engaging in contemplating upon emptiness. So once one is in the post-meditative session, one might think, okay, during the meditative session, you might say, during the meditative session, we are engaging directly, actively with emptiness, which is devoid of, which is the absence of absolutism. But when we come out of the meditation, of course, we have to eat, we have to drink, we have to, make merry, we have to, get along with our day-to-day life. So therefore, in meditation, everything's empty, but outside of meditation, absolutism does exist. So if you think this way, that is also not right. The thing is, because, okay, let me read the phrase, let me read the text first. Such effortless activities are bereft or devoid of elaborations of do's and don'ts. Thus, the great bliss is spontaneously formed. What it means here is, so we are not talking about effortless. We are talking about effort - less. So the difference here is the activities that we engage in post-meditative session. Of course, they're not effortless, but they are effortless, or they're free from the efforts of engaging in absolutism. So they are devoid of engaging, they're devoid of efforts put into engaging in absolutism. So in that sense, they are effortless. So it's not effortless like there's no effort at all, but it's effortless in the sense that we are not, one does not put efforts into engaging into absolutism. One disengages from absolutism. One engages in the aftermath of emptiness. So therefore, one is engaging into activities effortless. Not effortlessly, as in no effort at all, but without effort, or without any efforts of engaging in absolutism. So such effortless activities here refers to post-meditative activities. So the post-meditative off-session activities are free from efforts of engaging in absolutism. So therefore, the elaborations of do's and don'ts do not exist, or are no longer there. So as we remember during our previous lesson, elaboration here means putting in extra. So the reality of all phenomena is devoid of inherent existence, but we are putting in extra. We are adding more flavors because reality seems so bland for us, so plain. So we want to add more spices. We want to spice it up with absolutism, with externalism, with permanent, with so many things. We want to beautify what is something, what we want to beautify, we want to spice it up. We want to beautify something that is quite distasteful, in a sense. So all forms of attachment, as well as detachments or distancing from things that we like and dislike, comes from our elaborations. Reality itself is quite plain. It's like a clean slate. But it's too plain for us, so we draw up different things and we color them differently. We spice it up with our elaborations. So for someone who has experienced mental disengagement or meditative disengagement from absolutism, is free from such elaborations, and therefore they are free from such activities of do's and don'ts. So for them, what to abandon, what to take and what not to take, what to do and what not to do, are free from elaborations, free from such elaborations, and so therefore they are the correct activity. They are the right activity. And so, and since so the text follows, since the post-meditative activities are bereft of, are devoid of such elaborations of do's and don'ts. Elaboration here meaning engagement into absolutism. Therefore, the great bliss is spontaneously formed. Okay, so we will stop at point 5 here. We made up to point 5 today. We will continue from the rest next week because it's quite challenging subject, and so don't be discouraged because it's difficult. If it's difficult, it means there is something in there. Because it's challenging, it also kind of makes it more curious. So anyway, so don't be discouraged. Think of what we just discussed today. Think more thoroughly, and so bring up your experiences. Bring up your experiences about your contemplation into what we discussed today during next week's teaching. Because emptiness is so difficult to explain, so we have to go through all the we have to go round and round and round like this. As the text said earlier, emptiness can be experienced directly, and what the perceiver, the meditator, the practitioner experiences directly cannot be explained to someone who has not. So emptiness is inexplicable in such a ways. Emptiness is inexpressible, inexplicable, and therefore if you cannot express something, how can someone imagine something? So therefore emptiness is unimaginable as well. So remember in our lesson number 2, we just talk about the unimaginable. It's the lesson number 3, the unimaginable and impartial realization. So the realization of emptiness is unimaginably challenging for someone who has not, and therefore we have to go through all the way like this. And we have a saying in the monastery, in the emptiness is like a mute tasting a candy. A person who cannot speak, he can taste a candy, but he can never explain how it tastes like. So similarly, the taste of emptiness cannot be expressed as it is by the person who is tasting it. Of course, we can go around it, but the actual experience can only be experienced and never be expressed. So don't worry. That's why it's called actualization of emptiness. We don't call it just, in the beginning level, we talk about learning about emptiness, reading on emptiness, learning about emptiness. Then we go to realization of emptiness. And then at the ultimate level, we talk about actualizing emptiness. We're actualizing it. And one of the reasons is, of course, because we have been so much stuck in the other side of absolutism. So the opposite side of non-absolutism or emptiness is so difficult for us to stick. Okay, we have questions?
Yes, Rinpoche, we have one question from Sharon. I'll read it in English. Prostrate to Rinpoche La. How to avoid not to put too much spicy into our practice, and how to balance grasping and non-grasping. Thank you, Rinpoche.
That's a very good question, and this is what we are looking for in terms of when we say middle way, the middle way view, which is the view of the Prasangika Madhyamikas, the Buddhist philosophy. Something that is in balance between grasping and non-grasping. So the question was how to put less spice into our practices, right? I think as far as our practices are concerned, I think it's okay to put some spices, because we have been putting spices all in the wrong places. We have putting spices in our family matters, our business matters, our world, so much of the worldly matters. When it comes to the worldly matters, in our relationship, in our relationship to our loved ones, to our colleagues, to our business partners, and so on and so forth, we always put so much spice. So everything is either so good or so bad. It's never normal. Oh, I met such a great business deal. I met such a great partner. So he is such a great partner. I must keep him. Or she's such a bad person. I must get rid of her. So we are always going for extremism, absolutism, either very good or very bad. So this is the spicing up thing. As far as our practices are concerned, we are not spicing it up enough in a way. Not always. Sometimes we do spice it up a lot. Oh, my religion. Oh, I'm Gelugpa, so Gelugpa is the best one. Oh, I'm Kagyupa, Kagyupa is the best one, so on and so forth. Or let's say, oh, Buddhism is the best religion in the world. This is spicing up in religious practices. So in general, we are not spicing up that much in our spiritual practices. But when we do spice up, we spice up always the wrong things, on the wrong dishes. It's like putting chili on candies. That won't taste good on ice cream. You can put chili on noodles, but if you put chili on ice cream, that will not be very popular. So when it comes to spiritual practices, a little bit of spiciness is okay, because we have not been adding spices at all. We have always been adding spices on the worldly side, not on the spiritual side. But as your question says, how do we balance from grasping and non-grasping, especially into the spiritual realm? This can be achieved through if you are spicing it up too much, even in the spiritual realm, then you have to think of the other side. Compassion. But we always talk about the two methods, or the two sides, the two wings or two sides: compassion and method. Compassion and wisdom. Compassion and wisdom, or sometimes called the method and the wisdom. So the wisdom is the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality. But the ultimate reality is not always the best solution. Even in real life, even in the world, we always talk about, truth is so important. Truth is so important. I want someone to speak truth to me. But if someone tells you in your face that you look old, you look fat, you look, ugly, you don't like it. You want to cover it up. We cannot face reality as it is. So to a certain degree, reality has to be curtailed. And so therefore, this is where the method comes in. This is where the skillful means comes in. So even though the ultimate nature of all phenomena is devoid of inherent existence, still, in order to help, in order to serve, in order to alleviate the sufferings that is very much real, that is being experienced by sentient beings, one needs to rely upon the compassionate means. So therefore, balancing of grasping and non-grasping can be achieved through proper utilization of the method and the wisdom. Okay.
I have one more question, Rinpoche.
One more question next, please.
Yes, Rinpoche, how can we meditate into emptiness without engaging in objectification? Thank you, Rinpoche.
Okay, so when we meditate upon emptiness, I think the question arises from the fact that when we meditate upon emptiness, emptiness is our object of meditation or meditative focal point. The point of meditation is emptiness. So therefore, emptiness is the object of our meditation, and therefore, how can we disengage from objectification while we are meditating upon emptiness? I'm just assuming. If that is the question,
Yes, that is the question.
yeah, I mean, no. So if that is the question, the thing is this: emptiness has been so popular in Buddhist philosophy, Buddhist teaching, and so on and so forth, that people begin to think emptiness itself as an absolute result. And if you are thinking in such a way, if emptiness becomes a brand of such, then that is also a flaw. It's wrong. Emptiness means to be, in simple terms, empty means not there. So if it's not there, is disobjectification. It's not objectification. If you are looking for if you are looking for, let's say, if you're looking for an elephant and you don't find it in the room, the elephant is not in your room, the elephant is not in the cupboard, the elephant is not under the bed. The elephant not being there in your room is actually objectification of elephant in your room. There is no objectification here. When you are looking for an elephant which is not in your room, when you find there is no elephant in your room, you are actually finding the absence of elephant in your room. Even though the term we use is the absence, even the absence is devoid of any objectified reality, such as an elephant. So therefore, looking for emptiness or meditating upon emptiness is like looking for the non-existence of an elephant in your room, in a way. As I said before, emptiness cannot be explained exactly as it is, but I'm trying to beat around the bush here. Emptiness is the non-existence of inherent reality. So an elephant not being there in your room, when you find that out, you are actually disobjectifying and not objectifying. And since we are not talking about emptiness of one particular object, but emptiness, the nature of emptiness of all phenomena, so we are disengaging from objectification of every phenomena there is when we engage ourselves in meditating and actualizing upon emptiness. This is one thing, okay? Another thing is, I don't know. Another thing is when we are meditating about emptiness, we are dissecting the very object that is absolute. Okay, if there is an elephant, what is the elephant? Is the trunk elephant? Is the ear elephant? Is the eye elephant? And so on and so forth. We are dissecting the very absolute value that makes up an elephant. So, and as we dissect into the very reality, the absolute reality of what makes an elephant, there is nothing to be found. And so therefore, we, while in the process of objectifying something there isn't, we are actually disengaging from objectifying anything. Because anything that we want to objectify in our pursuit of emptiness, we are disengaging from objectification of any absolute realism. I don't know what I don't know if it's helpful or not, but what I just said, just think it over. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't help. If it doesn't help, you can ask next week about. But you must think it over. What I say, just think it over. If it makes sense, all the best for you. If it doesn't make sense, you can ask more questions, and then it will become clearer and clearer and clearer. But you must think. If you don't think and just leave it as what I said here, it will remain in Facebook, it will remain online, and that is it. It will never touch upon your, your mind. Okay, so I think that is it. Thank you. Thank you everyone for paying attention to this very difficult subject. And thank you, Ms. Huang, for your great translation. Okay, so we start.